Hello and welcome to another Fantasy Premier League video. My name is Steve and today we're taking a look at what to do with all the flagged players currently sitting in many squads out there, but 5 currently sitting in my particular team. To be honest, game week 15 and all the flagged players really revolves around captaincy. This is pretty much the key decision or the key turning point as to what we do with the likes of Haaland, Toney, Saka, and for the less owned players, Fabian Schar, and in my particular team, no one's got this player, but Toti sitting on the bench, who was just my last bench member. Now, Haaland is the obvious captain shout this game week if he is fit. And the last game he played was the Champions League fixture. Pep cited pulling him off at half-time, I believe it was, saying that he was suffering from a bit of illness that was going through the squad, as well as receiving a kick to the foot. Now, he missed out on the team sheet completely in game week 14. He wasn't even on the bench. And so this could be because the illness that he was going through was severely affecting his energy levels. And if that is the case, then we would probably assume that unless it was like a very serious illness, which doesn't sound like, well, we haven't heard any reports on exactly how severe it is, we'd assume he would probably be back for game week 15 if it was just that, because he would have had enough of a break to build his energy levels back up. However, if it is the foot injury that kept him out of this fixture, we're not entirely certain as to how serious that foot injury is, and that could keep him out of the fixture at home to Fulham at the weekend. So a lot of the tentative transfer plans that we'll discuss in this video do revolve around whether or not Haaland is at all fit to play this game week. Now, if he is out, I think the standout captain option this game week is probably KDB at 12.4 million. He nabbed the only goal in the game against Nottingham Forest at the weekend and came away with a double-digit return of 11 points as he mopped up all 3 bonus points. With Haaland, if Haaland is out, KDB could also potentially be the first choice penalty taker. Now, in the past, Marius, whenever he's been on the pitch, was second in line. However, Marius has missed back-to-back penalties in the last 2 penalties that he has taken, which were both in Champions League fixtures. There was one against FC Copenhagen and then against Borussia Dortmund, and so he could quite easily be off penalties, and that would most likely fall to Kevin De Bruyne, which would make him a really strong captaincy shout this weekend. Now, going elsewhere is a bit tricky if you're going outside of the Man City squad, and even in the Man City squad, it's still a bit difficult. Foden has had back-to-back benchings with no real reasoning as to why that has happened. He came on as a sub in game week 14 to earn him a solo point for the game week, which is even more frustrating as it was last week. As last week I actually bought Foden in. 2 weeks. Was it 2 weeks ago? I bought him in for a hit for the remaining 4 game weeks of the season, and he was out of the blue benched when he was one of the most nailed on assets in that Man City lineup. But then he's gone and got benched 2 game weeks in a row, and he didn't play that Champions League fixture either. in between the two Premier League games. And so I'm a little bit concerned about this. I have no idea why he's been put to the bench. I don't think he was severely out of form or anything, but maybe it's a tactical tweak with the availability of other players in the squad. It's just Pep's mind is very hard to guess as a manager. He sees things that mere mortals like us just wish we could only see. I would love to know what's going on in the mind of Pep. But that puts some severe questions over whether or not I can even go to Foden in my particular team for the captaincy. Now, outside of my team, the other captaincy shouts are probably more differential captain options. We would be looking at the likes of Kane at 11.6 million, could be a shout. He has been incredibly consistent, even though Tottenham have been struggling at times to generate attack without Kulusevski and Richarlison, who are both still flagged as injured and doubts for the game week. He is still managing to get into the points, even though they are, losing games. So he did score the only goal in the 2-1 loss to Newcastle. And so he is still popping up in the right positions and getting in on the points, and he has been incredibly consistent across the season. And to be honest, if Haaland wasn't in the Premier League, he would probably be in everyone's team. Now, Kane's no easy asset to get to, given his price point. So if you do have him in your squads, you could consider captaining him. He is playing against Liverpool, though. So Liverpool have been struggling of late, having back-to-back losses against two relegation struggling teams, and Spurs are at home, and so Kane could be an incredibly strong captaincy shout this weekend. Elsewhere, back to my team, I've got Salah in my midfield at the moment. He's 12.8 million, so he's still incredibly expensive and is not at all paying us managers who have invested in him back. He did get a goal this at the weekend, which was awesome to see considering I did captain him. But Liverpool haven't been generating a hell of a lot of fluid attack either. Salah hasn't even been awarded a penalty all season, which some may say, Salah is due a penalty, but the fact that Liverpool haven't even earned a penalty in the first 14 game weeks of the season kind of goes to show potentially the lack of attack or the lack of, serious attack that's happening inside the penalty box where, defenders are actually having to, go out and do lunge tackles or very risky tackles that could bring any of the Liverpool assets down. And so Tottenham's not an easy fixture to be going away to either, and so chucking the captain's armband on him is, to me at least, having owned Salah since my wildcard in game week 9 and having watched him play, seems like a very risky captaincy shout this weekend. Now, elsewhere, Wilson at Newcastle looks like a great candidate for the captain's armband this weekend if Haaland is out. He scored a penalty as well as netting an open play goal, and also got 2 assists in the 4-0 victory, so he was actually involved in every single points return that was made up in the weekend. Came away with, I think, about 19 points, which is a monster haul. However, in my particular team, I am running a ride or die strategy with 3 Newcastle defenders, and so I cannot easily get Wilson into my team without selling, probably in my case, Fabian Schar, which would invoke some sort of hit, which I will talk about in a little bit more detail later in this video as to why that is quite a risky play. But if you do have an easy route to get Wilson in, say for example if you do have Toney, who has got a 1 week domestic suspension, and you're not already tripled up with someone like Trippier, Pope and maybe Almiron, if you do not have a triple up, Wilson could be a really strong captaincy shout to bring into your teams this week. They are away, but it is to Southampton, who are currently 17th in the league. Just goes to show how leaky their defence has been. And the way Newcastle have been playing, honestly, they look like a top 4 or a top 6 side, but maybe even might squeeze into a top 4 spot this season. And going right down the list as someone that I am potentially looking to bring in, but it will depend on injury news as we see coming throughout the week, is Scamacca at West Ham. Now, he could potentially be on penalties. We are not certain of that though. Bowen looks almost assured that he is off penalties. That's why I sold him this game week for Saka, who only lasted 26 minutes, which is again quite frustrating. My trades week to week just do not seem to be working out at the moment. But the penalty that was awarded to West Ham was awarded when Scamacca was off the pitch. Now, this is not a rare occurrence. Scamacca's minutes have been quite managed as of late. He's only made 90 minutes once in the last 6 game weeks, and so chucking the captain's armband on him is also super risky because he may not be on the pitch when a penalty is awarded, or doesn't have as much time on the pitch to be hauling in the points for us. But the penalty did look like it was falling to Cresswell, who could be a really sneaky buy this week, a defender that's potentially on penalties for a relatively strong defensive team in West Ham. Could be a pretty meta play. But Scamacca was off the pitch. Cresswell didn't actually take the penalty because Ben Rama walked up to Cresswell, who had ball in hand, and actually asked him to take the penalty, in which Cresswell did oblige, gave the ball to Ben Rama, and Ben Rama sunk it. Now, Ben Rama looks like he could be a great buy this week as well, although he is a slight rotation risk in that West Ham outfit, and so we would have to be paying very close attention to what's going on there if you are looking to bring in someone like Ben Rama into your squads. I just mentioned Saka. He's currently 8 million. Brought him into my squad for that really tasty fixture against Nottingham Forest, and he looked like he was going to haul as he set up Martinelli's goal, but he then injured his ankle when he looked like he took maybe he hit the shot wrong, but it was a ball falling out of the air, and he went to hit a volley and pulled up immediately with a bit of ankle strain, and got taken off only after it was 26 minutes into the match. And so the injury might not be that severe. I mean, I've hit plenty a wayward volley where it comes off the end of the toe, where you put a lot of power behind it, and it's not a hyperextension, but it really does pull on the joints in your ankle. And so potentially Arteta did only bring him off to preserve his World Cup hopes and to potentially preserve him for this very important fixture away to Chelsea this weekend. But given how close the World Cup is, he may not risk him. Saka may even, well, I don't want to say that he would play up the injury in order to not play, but I'd say he'd be a lot more concerned about this injury to make sure that he doesn't risk any of his World Cup hopes. And so he may play and he may not play at all. It's kind of, that one's a hard one to know. So I don't even know if we'll get any solid information about whether or not Saka's even going to be in the squad for Chelsea at the weekend, which is pretty tricky because if you're looking at my team on screen, Toney is definitely out. Haaland could quite possibly be out if it is that foot injury that's got him out. Saka might not be risked for the World Cup. Fabian Schar only made it through, well, he made it through the majority of the match. He got through 82 minutes, so he did bank in his clean sheet. But he was pulled off, and Eddie Howe, when he was asked about it a day ago or a couple of days ago, said that Fabian mentioned that he was feeling his hamstring, which is the direct quote, whatever that means. It doesn't sound like it's too serious. It sounds like it might be, I don't know, maybe a bit of fatigue or a bit of strain on the muscle or something, but I have no idea whether or not he's even going to be lining up this game week. And so I'm potentially looking down the barrel of only being able to field 9 players in my current team. And that also includes Mitrovic and Andreas, who are both away to City. So it looks like a really tricky game week to navigate this week. And so hits are on the mind. Now, how viable is it to take a hit when there's only 2 game weeks to play? 2 game weeks in order to return the -4 points that we're looking at potentially taking here is an extremely short time horizon for those points to be repaid. Now, there's 2 ways to look at this. One is, are you taking a hit to bring in a captain for this game week? And if you are, hits do become a lot more viable. The reason for that is the player that you bring in to captain only has to score 2 points more than the player that you are looking to take out in order for that hit to be repaid immediately. Now, obviously, if you are looking at taking a hit, we should only be focusing on very strong attacking teams that are playing weaker oppositions in order for us to maximize the chance of points being hauled for the potential players that we are bringing in. However, in my case, the only captaincy shout that I would look at bringing in for a hit would be Kevin De Bruyne, and I'm already tripled up on Man City, and so it's actually a bit of surgery to my team in order to do that. I would either have to do a 2-way switch of probably Foden and Salah in order to bring a Kevin De Bruyne in, but then that means I'm not at all dealing with Saka, Toney or Schar. And so bringing KDB in this week is almost a foregone conclusion that I'm not going to be able to do it. But if you are able to jump on a KDB this week for a captaincy shout, a hit for him could be repaid and repaid quite quickly. And Man City's last 2 fixtures before the World Cup kicks off are pretty tasty. 2 home fixtures this week to Fulham, and then the following week to Brentford, I believe. Just double check that. Brentford at home for game week 16. If you're not looking to bring in a new captaincy option, the -4 points becomes even more tricky, especially given the fixtures that are being played this week. Liverpool are playing Tottenham, which are 2 of the big teams, and Arsenal are playing Chelsea. And so we will be looking at very differential captaincy shouts, which just increases the risk of whoever we bring in for these hits being able to pay them back. Now, depending on how your team is actually looking, if you've already got a relatively strong 11 or 12, taking a hit might not be worthwhile. It might be just more wise to play one of your bench members because you may not get the -4 points that you spend back even before the World Cup kicks off in game week 16. But for me, with my one free transfer, I'm only looking at fielding 10. And that includes Nico Williams coming on at home to Brentford, which may not be too bad considering Toney's suspension, but Nico Williams was benched in game week 14 as well to add further headaches to my particular team. He only made 26 minutes at the end of the game, and so maybe he's been rested and he will be starting this fixture, but who knows? He could be another one-pointer coming off the bench at Nottingham Forest, and the chances of him getting any sort of attacking return in that time is super limited. It's tough. It's really tough, and taking hits this game week has even, if it's not even complicated enough, adds even further problems to the mix, and the fact that game week 16 is the last game week, as we've been saying for many videos in the last few game weeks. We could see all sorts of rests for people that are already locked into World Cup squads. For the teams with deeper squads like Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool to a certain extent, although they have a few injuries, we could see rotation for those players that are already locked into World Cup squads, just so that they do not risk any injuries that would potentially rule them out for the World Cup. Last year, before the season even kicked off, the top 4 or top 6 sides requested that game week 16 was not scheduled for any of the top 6 teams to be playing one another for this very reason. And so that in itself suggests that there could be, I don't want to say mass rotation, but a much higher likelihood of rotation to key assets in game week 16. And so we need to be really careful there as well. For any of those players that are on the fringes of the World Cup squads, they will almost certainly be playing because they will be doing their very best to get into the squads. However, some of these squads are being announced before that game week 16 fixture is even played. For instance, the England manager Southgate, I think, is releasing his squad like 3 or 4 days before the final fixtures before the fixtures are played in game week 16, and so some of these players won't even have a chance to play out of their skin in that game week 16 in order to get into the World Cup squad. However, I think I heard that Southgate, when he's already submitted his full team, which is 55 players strong. Which seems like a ludicrous amount of players. I didn't realise it was actually that high. And so, I mean, people could get called up out of that 55-man squad, and if they are in that 55-man squad, they will want to be putting in a very strong performance in game week 16, because who knows, in that first game in the World Cup, someone could do a hammy or be ruled out for the remainder of the World Cup fixtures, and then managers will be looking at who was in form in the last couple of game weeks, and so there is still a lot of motivation for these players to be playing well, even though the finalised squads will be announced before game week 16 even kicks off. Now, I think that's all my notes for the remaining weeks. Now, we will take a quick look at how I did in game week 14. And it was a bit rough, to be honest. I ended up with 61 points, which was 2 points above average. And even though I was above average, I did drop a little over 100,000 places, which was quite annoying because after the first the first day of fixtures, where 8 fixtures were played, so 16 teams went out and played, I was actually up 300,000 ranks. However, Arsenal's demolition of Nottingham Forest just ate into all that rank gain, as the heavily owned asset of Jesus, who's still at 60% ownership, it's actually 59.4 or something, came away with a couple of assists. He actually got a 9-pointer. and all of the defenders all got their clean sheets racked in. I did have Martinelli in my squad who scored the opening goal, which was great considering I did bring him in as part of that hit for Foden a couple of weeks ago. I had to take that hit for pricing reasons. I was about to be priced out of the move. And then Foden goes and gets benched 2 game weeks in a row, and so he's only earned to be 2 points. Martinelli didn't do anything last week either, but he has repaid me with a goal. However, the player that I did take out as part of that hit was Trossard, who was trolling me. I bought him in for the captaincy option a couple of game weeks ago against Nottingham Forest, in which he blanked, and so I got rid of him to bring Martinelli in, and then Trossard has gone and scored against Man City and Chelsea. Like I said, my trades have been a little bit rough. Saka, who I bought in this week for Bowen, did give me the assist, but only managed 26 minutes, and so only came away with 4 points. Should also note that Saka's replacement in Reece Nelson, who came on and played the remaining 74 minutes of the match, got 2 goals and an assist, or was it 2 assists? It came away with an absolute monster haul, and so if there's any doubt to Saka this week, why wouldn't you play Reece Nelson again after he's absolutely played out of his skin in the previous game week? And so Saka is even more risky to hold on to this game week. My triple clean sheet for Newcastle came through, which was great to see. So Pope and Schar both got 6 points. Trippier with the clean sheet also came away with an assist in that game. Man City only won 1-0, and so Cancelo came away with his clean sheet, but had no other goals being scored in order for him to rack up any sort of attacking returns. Salah finally returns something for me, and I had the captain's armband on him, which was great to see because he was the 3rd highest scoring player in my team next to Martinelli and Trippier. I hardly ever captain defenders, and so the toss-up between Salah and Martinelli was really only a couple of points in it. Foden, as I said, blanked with his 1 point off the bench. Andreas got his clean sheet, but no other returns. Mitrovic only got 1 point, which means he probably picked up his 4th yellow card, which he did, so he could potentially get his 5th yellow this week and even sit out the last game week of the season, and he's got a really tricky fixture this game week to Man City, as I've already mentioned. Toney got his 5th yellow and did nothing in the match, and so that's about how my game week rounded out. It was rough. It was looking amazing after the first day of fixtures. It was looking awesome. I was like, great, I've got 2 really strong candidates in Martinelli and Saka, and it just wasn't to be. So I have to have a serious think about what I'm going to do this game week. It's a super tricky game week to navigate. There's only 2 game weeks left in order to gain any sort of ranks before we get the unlimited transfers across the World Cup. Now, it should be noted that it is not a wild card. We are not activating any chip for this. It is something that FPL has just gifted to us. And the key reason that I bring that up is because it is not a chip being played. It does mean that all chips, apart from the free hit, I guess, will be available to be played in game week 17. So we could be potentially looking at some sort of bench boost in game week 17 if the fixtures line up tasty enough. But that's far away from now, and I haven't even looked at the game week 17 fixtures and onwards. I'm just trying to focus all of my efforts on gaining as many points as possible without taking any unnecessary hits that have been very tricky to get the points back from across the last couple of game weeks. And so, yeah, let me know how your teams out there are doing in the comments below. And that's it for today's video. If you did make it this far through the video, please do consider giving it a like. And if you are new around here and like the content, please do hit that big red subscribe button to be notified about more FPL content coming your way. And until next time, I'll catch you again shortly. Cheers.